And I'll help you.
All
do
set.
that.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. The meeting will come to order and the clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Gruber,
Here.
Councilmember Harris. You're on mute.
Here.
Councilmember Lightfoot,
Present, ma'am.
Councilmember Martin,
Here.
Councilmember Patterson,
Here.
Councilmember Pio,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Vice President Lupian,
Here.
President Melendez.
Here.
Thank you.
So we're here today to hold confirmation hearings for 3 members of Mayor Evans' administration as required by the city charter. The Committee of the Whole will consider each resolution submitted by the administration at next month's committee meeting on Thursday, February 10th, and the council meeting Tuesday, February 15th. We will begin with Felipe Hernandez as the mayor's selection for fire chief. Mayor Evans, would you like to make a statement regarding the appointment of Chief Hernandez?
Yes, thank you, President Melendez, and to all of council. I thank you for your indulgence and for this confirmation hearing for Chief Hernandez. I want to say that I'm honored to be able to recommend Chief Hernandez to this body for appointment to the fire chief of the Rochester Fire Department. One of the most important qualities to me is leadership, but also their commitment to making sure that the men and women of the fire department are valued, and that through that value that our community is serviced with high quality fire services. And I believe that Chief Hernandez is the person that can bring that. Chief Hernandez has a commitment to making sure that our fire department is reflective of the community and the residents in which we serve. He understands the importance of recruitment. He understands the importance of training. We had a tragedy earlier this month, where we lost 2 folks to fires. And what impressed me was Felipe, Chief Hernandez and his team were out almost immediately, reinforcing the importance of fire prevention. So much of this job is just not putting out fires. It's working to make sure that our residents understand that we have to work together to prevent fires. The fire department is also on the front line for all emergency preparedness situations that we have in our city. And it's important that we have a person to do that. And the last point I'll make, because I know you want to get into questions for the chief, is that I think that Chief Hernandez understands the importance of culture, teamwork, and collaboration. And one of the key elements of our administration in terms of our mission, vision, and values, one of the values is collaboration. And the fire department cannot be an organization that just operates in a vacuum away from everyone else in the public safety building. They have to see how that connects with the larger community. Chief Hernandez understands that. And as an example of that is our Pathways to Public Safety program with the Rochester City School District. That's something that I was instrumental in supporting when I was a board member. That is a program that allows our students to be exposed to careers in public service around EMS, fire, and police. And Chief Hernandez is committed to making sure that our students have the opportunity to enroll in programs like that and get the leadership skills necessary to be able to become firefighters. The last point I'll make is that Chief Hernandez is making history. He will be the first Latino fire department in Rochester, the first Latino fire chief in Rochester, and he will be probably one of the few Latino fire chiefs in all of the country and the only one in New York State. Why is that important? Because young men and women, people of color, will be able to look to him and know that there is a place for them in the fire service. They will know that they too one day could become chief. His qualifications is unmatched. I won't go on. You all have his resume. In addition to being a firefighter, he owes an associate's, a bachelor's, and a master's degree. So he has also continued his education pursuits in addition to serving in the fire service. So with that, I would ask for the support of my colleagues on council in supporting Felipe Hernandez as the fire chief. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor Evans. Chief Hernandez, welcome.
Hello.
Would you like to make an opening statement as well?
Yes, please. I want to thank the members of City Council for having me here this afternoon. I also want to thank Mayor Evans for his support in this confirmation hearing. Becoming interim fire chief of the Rochester Fire Department has been the greatest honor of my career. Hopefully, the men and women of City Council will bestow upon me an even greater honor by confirming me as the fire chief of the Rochester Fire Department. As a newly appointed fire chief, one of the main questions you get asked is, what is your vision? As a student of leadership, you are also quickly taught that a leader must have a vision. How do you expect to lead a group of individuals when they don't know what to follow? So as I pondered for a long time and thought about some of the concerns I've been hearing about, improving the culture of the department became a common theme. The culture of the fire service can be amazing at times. To have your life dependent on those you work with creates a special bond, just like a family. It becomes so important to want to fit in, to be accepted, that some of us lose who we are. You see, the culture can be great when you all look and act the same, but unfortunately, the same culture can turn on you quickly when you are different, unique, or play by a different set of rules. So my vision is simple and straight to the point. Respect the community and each other. Having the best equipment, most highly trained individuals in the world doesn't do us any good if we don't respect the community, if we don't respect each other. It's important that all members feel that they belong, that they all enjoy coming to work, to allow them the ability to enjoy the honor of being a Rochester firefighter. Many diversity and harassment training courses tend to focus on the individual. I challenge all of our members to look out for each other as we do in the fire. I find it interesting that firefighters are some of the bravest individuals in the world. They have no problem going into dangerous situations to save a life, yet the same individual is afraid to stand up for a fellow firefighter who's being harassed or made fun of simply because they do not want to go against the culture. This needs to stop. I truly believe that we can continue to honor the best parts of the fire service culture while also respecting each other, but we have to work on it together. As fire chief, I promise to continue to fight for what is right, to ensure fairness, to offer opportunities, to give second chances, and most importantly, to ensure everyone is treated the same. This position will allow me to do the work necessary to make Rochester the best place to be. As fire chief, I will also do my best to ensure safety. As a department, one of our main goals will be community risk reduction and engagement. I don't want a reactive fire department. I want a proactive fire department. If confirmed as fire chief, I will lead a department of service to the people of Rochester. My goal is to serve them, to meet their needs. Once again, I want to thank the members of City Council and Mayor Evans for considering me for this position. This nomination is a great honor, and I am humbled to be so considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hernandez. I'll now open up the hearing to questions from the council. I do have a quick question first to lead us off. So Chief, I see that you have about 22 years doing this work already. It looks like 22 years in April. Can you talk about maybe the change of the fire department over those 22 years, and then what you see as the future in terms of diversity? And I really want to hammer that home. I think that the fire department does a great job of recruiting from the community, and I think there's a lot to learn there, and we want to encourage that in other departments in public safety.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So the fire service in general, I mean, the Rochester is by far a class 1 fire department, right? I mean, over the past 22 years, we've developed, we've grown. Right now we're accredited, class 1 ISO certified, which basically means that the fact that we have good fire protection services that we provide. We got great firefighters. I have no problem, using our firefighters against any other firefighter in the whole world, right? So we have the best. Internally, though, and specifically with diversity, yes, we have made some improvements. For example, in the last 10 years, I would say our diversity numbers went from 17.5% up to 30%, right? So the numbers continue to move upward, and we have to keep that motion going. Part of my speech really came from the heart because, I kind of went through some of the stuff that I mentioned. At the beginning, when you're a firefighter lieutenant, you're part of the crew, you just want to fit in, right? So you do whatever it takes to be one of the members. I mentioned before that I used to go by the name of Phil because it just made it easier for people to pronounce my name. But then, as I basically had more control of myself, I realized, no, my name is Felipe, right? I got to be proud of who I am and my culture, and so not to try to blend in those type of situations. But unfortunately, as a minority or as a female, as you move up within the department, it gets harder, right? For some reason, your promotion is questioned versus others, right? So that's definitely something that we need to work on to ensure that everyone feels comfortable moving up, right? There's always concern of, why the numbers aren't as high in the senior ranks. Well, part of this is the reason they probably feel afraid to break that culture to move up in that step. So that's something that as a department and the city, we have to encourage and support all those members to move up as much as they can.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you, Mr. Hernandez?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good.
Nice to meet you, finally.
Yeah, and you as well. It was so nice to hear you talk about prevention and your vision for community risk reduction and engagement. So can you give us a little bit more detail about that? How will that look or play out under your leadership?
Yes, so one of the things is we need to get a little bit more creative in regards to how we're engaging the community, right? We can't complain about staffing or we don't have this or we don't have that. One of the things I've been doing is I don't want to hear what we can't do. I want to hear what we can do. So part of it is working together, listening to each other and thinking a little bit out of the box, right? As Mayor Evans mentioned, unfortunately, the last few fires we've been having have all been related to kitchen-related incidents, right? So one of the things we did quickly is, besides, as you mentioned, going out, being proactive in the community, we quickly developed a fire safety video in regards to kitchen fires, both in English and Spanish, okay? That was done within a couple of days, all right? There's no reason, to be honest, that it took 150 years for the Rochester Fire Department to make a video like that, but we did it in the last couple of weeks. So it's just stuff like that we have to be a little bit more creative as we move forward. Unfortunately, with COVID in the past, things did slow down, but once again, we can't keep using that as an excuse. We have to move forward. We have to keep engaging the community. So my goal is to not only the fire safety division or the community risk reduction division to be involved, but the entire fire department has to make it their mission to be out there and involved with the community. So that's my goal. I want the fire department to become part of the community.
Any details on how?
On how? Well, like I mentioned, we're going to be working on videos where we currently do a lot of programs in the rec centers, in the schools. For example, last summer, once again, we take advantage of the opportunities, right? So last summer, for example, what do we like doing in the summertime, right? Swimming. So we actually developed a water safety poster contest within the rec center and schools to get the kids engaged. And the winner of the poster got a ride on the fire boat, right? And we got pictures, and I'll share it with you if you want. Two girls having a beautiful amount of time. But there's work to do. And with the new staff that I have a new executive deputy chief of administration who's helping me with her ideas from other places. Once again, we got to think out of the box, right? So part of the thing is I do have to listen, and we do have to work on programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Lupien.
Yeah, hello. My question to you is around, you mentioned increasing respect from firefighters with the community and to each other. And I wondered if you had more insight into how you might go about that.
Okay, well, one of the things is we have to be comfortable working with each other, right? I think you got to be comfortable when you work with different people who are not like you. So one of the things that we are working on right now with the HR department is we're actually working with a company that works on diversity and inclusion. And once again, we got to think out of the box. The previous diversity and harassment training that we've been doing obviously isn't working because we keep having issues, right? So this company specifically related to help us to kind of dwell exactly to what's going on and provide specific training as needed. One of the things I say, especially when it comes to fire officers, right, in the fire service, they do an amazing job fighting fires, okay, best in the world. But when it comes to management and leadership, that's different. I'll just be honest, in the fire service, we really don't spend the time to train officers in those specific fields of leadership and management. So that's something where on top of that, this type of training of diversity and inclusion is important. I will add on top of that, one of my frustrations is we always talk about diversity and getting the numbers, but then we don't focus on the inclusion part. I just feel is really the critical part. When we get people in the door, what are we doing with them? Just to have numbers doesn't mean anything. So that's the goal. Is I also want to see more inclusion training to ensure that the members are feeling comfortable working together so they can move up.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I can't see the chat, so can you just put me in the lineup, please? Councilman Lightfoot.
The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not showing my face. I am driving, so Chief, you will respect the fact that I'm trying to be safe. I don't want to call you
Yes, I
guys
do.
out. So, Chief, I'm a big supporter, man, big fan of you. I've seen some of the appointments that you've made already in the upper echelons. I think you and the mayor have made Executive Deputy Chief Everett first African-American female in the ranks of Executive Deputy Chief. So you're not just talking the talk, you're actually walking the walk. So I appreciate that. But I am going to hit you with a couple tough questions. And as you relates to culture, you talked about me being 22 years I spent in the Rochester Fire Department. I understand that culture that you're talking about. And as it relates to discipline and accountability and promotions and things of that nature, is that plays a role as it relates to equity, right? So
Right.
what is your stance and your vision and your leadership style as it relates to accountability and being equitable, as well as looking at how past practices have been that have been unequitable as it relates to discipline, promotions, and things of that nature?
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Thank you for that question. One of the things that I've always fought for is, to do what's right and make sure everyone's treated equally. One of the things I do is I enforce the rules, right? But when people hear that, it's not about being strict. The reason why I enforce the rules is so that everyone is treated fairly. Okay. The problem is when you don't enforce the rules, then the popular people get treated different versus the unpopular people, which unfortunately tend to be the minorities and the women. So I treat everyone fairly. Everyone gets the same discipline as the rules are enforced. I would say that my record of following up on issues, on charges, on memorandums are the highest you've seen in years. I've handled multiple situations. I would have more, but some of them ended up retiring at that point. Even recently with some of the issues we've been having lately, I've been working with Dr. Rose Nichols. I've come to her in the last just 2 months with a couple of incidents. And one of the first things she was like, wow, what's going on, right? So, when we have this meeting, I kind of say, well, first off, it's not new, all right? This stuff has been happening. I said, the only difference is you have a fire chief that's actually bringing it up and following up on it, right? So I'm not hiding anything. If I know about something, I'm gonna handle it, Two things I'm gonna tell you. If you ask me about an incident, I'm gonna tell you, I don't know about it, and there's gonna be proof that I didn't, or yes, I already know about it and it's being handled. You're never gonna hear me say, well, yeah, I heard about it, but I'm waiting for this and I'm waiting for that. And no, it's either being handled or I didn't know about it. So that's where I'm at. I've joked around before with, I know a Councilwoman, Lachey Harris. Now this is her third time, right? But I've become very popular on Lounsbury the last couple of months, right? The reason is every single time I handle a situation, it ends up in Lounsbury because that's the culture trying to shut me down, all right? Whether it's based on charges or suspending someone, somehow the next day I'm on Lounsbury, whether it's related or not. But I'm not gonna let that stop me. I mean, I'm here to do a job, and that's what I'm gonna move forward and do. I'm here to change the culture, and that's my plan.
I can definitely respect that and appreciate that about you, Chief. I have given you information that you followed up on immediately that I haven't seen done in my time and experience, not only on council, but in the fire department as well. My last question, follow-up piece, and I'll let other people chime in, is as it relates to residency. What are your thoughts on that as it relates to senior management and or just fire employees in whole? What is your thoughts on residency requirements?
I think that's something that we should kind of look into. Obviously you want your employees to be city residents, right? I understand that that's the goal. But I think we also have to see, some of the difficulties that may bring into. For example, I'll be honest, we have a hard time with mechanics. It's just, we don't have city residents who are mechanics at that level. So it makes it very difficult to fill those roles. So I think if you want to put in a residency requirement, but then you got to back it up and do something to ensure you have the right amount of potential candidates, right? It doesn't help if you come up with, and not just residency, but any type of restriction where you're going to limit your pool, right? So obviously, if you're going to have one, I think you got to have something, the other to support it.
Thank you, Chief.
Great. I'm going to have Councilmember Pio go first, and then followed by Vice President Lupien.
Thank you. I know this is on a absolute bottom of the totem pole here, but you speak about culture. Some things that many wish to keep and not change. One thing in particular is the firefighter calendar. Now, that firefighter calendar comes out in the Northwest. We support it. We've come out for the release party. I mean, we are all about it. Where's your stance on the calendar?
Well, the calendar still moved forward, right? I mean, it was still successful, that they still saved money. Just to be honest, it was brought up to my attention that, they wanted the Rochester to support it, but that's something you have to be careful with. First off, when it was implemented, no one checked with the law department in regards to that. The concern with the calendars, and you could go and type it in, calendars cause issues in the firehouses. Even with the current calendars, we've had issues of them being marked up and potential harassment. So even though I support calendars, but maybe not the way it was being created, right? So I just want to be careful, especially the fact when you have young individuals becoming a job, all of a sudden, showing their bodies and stuff in the new calendar. Once again, I'm not going to say that's right or wrong, but I just don't think that's appropriate for a city to be pushing forward. We did support it behind the scenes. We let them use the equipment and access for pictures and stuff. But I think we have to be careful that, once again, that all employees feel comfortable at work.
Thank you.
Vice President Lupien.
Yes. Question about the pathway to getting complaints that we may receive from the community to the fire department. Currently, I think it's calling the chief's office, if I'm not mistaken.
Go ahead, someone.
Just wondering if that's the case, if you'd consider creating a process that's a little bit more user-friendly and transparent to the community to be able to know that their complaint has been received and have some kind of idea of what action has been taken.
Okay, further, so I believe the process, they could contact me. They usually go to City Hall, and then we get notified. But yeah, if that's something that you're definitely interested, I mean, I'm willing to have those discussions to see exactly, what format, that could be. Once again, transparency is one of the visions of the Mayor Evans, and I'll definitely be willing to work in that if that's a concern of the community, that's not being done appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Martin, followed by Councilmember Gruber.
So what measures do you have in place currently, or will you be willing to put in place to make sure that firefighters who identify with the LGBTQ+ community feel safe and are treated fairly and equitably on the job?
So currently we don't have any measures, right? So that's something we'll definitely have to look into in regards to ensure that everyone feels comfortable working in this atmosphere. So once again, that's one of the things that we do have to improve on, right? And so that's something that definitely we can have conversation with and develop a system to make sure that everyone feels comfortable working for the Rochester Fire Department.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief. I really appreciated hearing your comment about wanting to have a more proactive fire department. And I want to give you an opportunity to give a couple more specifics about, I think you gave a nice specific earlier about the kind of poster competition and ways that you're reaching community members that way. But I'm thinking in particular around education, around kitchen safety. There must be some, and we do a lot of work already as a department, I know, in terms of giving people smoke detectors, et cetera, in their households. But I'm sure you have a number of ideas of how we can be even more proactive. And I just want to give you an opportunity to share some of those specifics.
Sure, fair enough. And just to clarify, there is a lot we do. High rises, part of the issue is to look at the data, what you have in regards to where your trouble spot is, right? So obviously, we have done a lot in regards to senior living centers and high rises in regards to safety conditions in that situation. Another great opportunity are churches, right? We've had some incidents where we've had some fires related to kitchen. So that's an opportunity to kind of work with the churches in regards to fire safety situations. To work with fire safety conditions in churches. Part of it, the schools, we used to be more involved in the schools. That's something that we kind of lacked a little bit. I believe the rec centers are also a great opportunity for us to be more involved in. That's something that we never, have done in regards to the line. But those are some of the things that we have been working on just to kind of be more proactive and involved with the community. Once again, part of this is not a one-team thing. Part of it is having the right people in the right places as well. With my new executive chief of administration, she has a strong background in doing this stuff. I'm excited, and that's one of the reasons why I selected her is because she has that strong background and the opportunity to listen and actually move forward. We can't be afraid to try new things. But once again, in general, a lot of the major community centers, high rises, churches. Those are areas that I think we could really work with to kind of get the message out.
And Chief, if you were confirmed and had an opportunity to work on this year's budget, would you be expecting to put some type of measurable KPI around that into your budget this year?
I would definitely look into that. Yep. Like I said, we just started the budget process. We actually are working on KPIs. So I would definitely look into that. Okay.
The last thing I would just say is I was recently actually, I guess it was a year ago at this point, had members of the fire department come and talk to some folks over at Peace Village, which is the encampment downtown. And it was just really amazing how much curiosity and interest and good conversation there was with people really having just a ton of questions. It was Deputy Chief Shriver at the time. Mm-hmm. And, I think that it's an amazing thing how many questions people have for anytime to see the fire marshal, right? And I just want to make sure that we're not just saying that we want to be out there, but really holding ourselves accountable to be in schools, to be in rec centers, to be all over the place where we know people really want to hear these messages. So I hope we can work on that together.
Definitely. Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, President Melendez. Chief Hernandez, I really can say that I appreciate your comments and your vision for diversity as it relates to Black and Brown and women community members coming onto the fire department. So I have a follow-up question to the question that Councilmember Gruber had asked in relates to fire safety. Can you tell me more about your plan for addressing arsons in our community?
So depending on, I'm trying to clarify in regards to arson. We have the data to show what's causing the issues, right? A lot of it is done intentional, right? So, anything that's not done intentional are areas for us to work on. And that's kind of where we kind of coordinate both the fire investigation unit and the CR unit together. They're actually both report to the same command staff. So they're both in constant communication with each other. So obviously, yes, we have to be proactive and look at the data and look at what are the problems to follow up on. And obviously fire investigations are definitely one of the ways where we could pinpoint certain situations or causes things may be happening. For example, it gives you the opportunity to find out if there's some type of malfunctioning equipment that tend to happen on more than often. So definitely, the mixture of both units working together, which they are, is critical to improving on those areas.
Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate that.
Any final questions?
I do have one more question.
Vice President Lupia.
In regards to youth and fire setting, I know that there's some kind of a program in place. Can you talk about that program and any plans you have to do more work around? I guess what I'm trying to say is, there was a situation where there was an 8-year-old who set a fire and she was going to be brought into family court. And my concern is around getting kids into the pipeline of the court system young and what that does to them. But knowing that there's, some kind of a program to work with kids before it gets to that. So I just wanted you to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, so our fire investigators are trained in juvenile fire settings, right? So they have specific training in regards to how you talk to a kid, how you move forward, right? So we have that training. Any type of situation similar to what you mentioned, we get notified, because obviously the goal is to stop them at the beginning, right? And so that's something that we're very proactive in following up on, especially at the young age, because we want to stop it while they're young before it gets worse, all right? In regards to being more involved, once again, that's something that we could definitely do, to maybe create a program, maybe work with human services or something in regards to having the ability to have those conversations with young and kid to prevent, future tragedies. Yes, we do fire, just similar to what you're talking about. I mean, obviously part of the fire prevention services, we do go to schools. We do have programs where we are talking to kids in a young age as it is, right? So in general, we are doing that, but of course, those specific cases, we could definitely look into maybe being a little bit more proactive and maybe creating certain programs to just ensure that they're not relapsing or continue on with that type of negative behavior.
Yeah, because obviously, young kids can be curious. Exactly. And I think, one situation they will have learned their lesson, but with other kids, it's a warning sign. Right. And so how are we, using that touch point with the kid to help them get on, get connected with services or something. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Well, hearing no other questions, that concludes our confirmation hearing for Chief Hernandez. Chief, thank you very much for your time and answering all of our questions, and you may be excused.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you.
We will now move on to Dr. Rose Nichols as the mayor's selection for Director of Human Resources Management. Mayor Evans, would you like to make a statement regarding the appointment of Dr. Nichols?
Yes, I am very excited and honored to be able to present to you all, present to some and introduce to folks who may not have the opportunity to have met Dr. Nichols, Dr. Rose Nichols as the Director of Human Resource Management. Rose, I want everyone to kind of just think back to your job, your first job that you had. And I want you to think about the things that you wish you would have had in that job. And I submit to you that one of the things that many people have said to me is that they don't leave their job, their organization or company, they leave because they have a bad boss or there was bad leadership. One of the things that I talked to Dr. Nichols about when I was looking to select a Director of Human Resources Management was how they feel about the treatment of employees. And one of the tenets of the Evans administration is our concern for public employees. And it has a line that says the Evans administration will develop, support, empower, and care for our employees and create a citywide team of highly engaged professional public servants. Dr. Nichols embodies this. As the young people say, she doesn't talk about it, she is about it. She understands that in order for our city to be serviced in a strong way, it's important that we make sure that our employees feel valued and important. And if you look at what's going on across the country, workers are standing up and saying, you know what, we don't have to take not being treated right. We don't have to take not being treated fairly, and they're leaving in droves. So we've had millions of workers leave the workplace across the country in all industries because they feel as though they're not valued by their employer. And some people have said, why is that important? Well, it's important because it is reflective on the services that we deliver to our public. If our employees feel valued, and if they feel as though that they have a place in the career ladder to be able to see themselves maybe start out as a clerk and one day become the deputy mayor or a commissioner or a director, they are going to make sure that they are going to serve the public well. So it's going to do all of us that are on this call well, because we know that our employees are there. So that is important. I also wanted someone that could help inoculate into the culture the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Dr. Nichols has worked on these issues with the Let's Get Real initiative and many other issues, so she understands that. And then the other piece is human resources has to be a part of every single conversation that we have in the city. It can't be in isolation. The fire department can't operate on its own and think that it can do whatever it wants to do. The police department can't operate on its own and think it can do whatever it wants to do. The mayor's office, human resources is a piece of every single one of those pieces. And you have to have a person that understands that they have to be able to liaison with all of those departments in a cross-functional way to bring cohesion and create a culture where we are be able to create a hope-filled city. Dr. Nichols had me at hello. She embodies this, she cares about this, and she also knows that she cannot do it by herself. So she is able to collaborate with folks. And I tell people, if you can't check your ego at the door and work with other folks, you cannot work for me. And Dr. Nichols embodies this in one of the best ways that I have seen. So I am not, she's qualified, obviously. She's more than qualified. She probably could be doing other things, making a lot more money, but she's here to serve because she understands that to whom much is given, much is expected. She is a servant leader. And I can tell you that I have seen that from watching her as deputy director, but even more so over these last 4 weeks. So I want to present to you Dr. Rose Nichols, and I would ask for your support in appointing this talented individual that cares so much about our employee base, thereby caring about the residents of Rochester. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor Evans. Dr. Nichols, welcome. Would you like to make an opening statement?
Yes, I would. Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you for this confirmation hearing. I just wanted to say thank you to President Melendez, Vice President Lupien, and Council Members Gruber, Harris, Lightfoot, Martin, Patterson, Pio, and Smith for having me here today. And I also want to give and acknowledge Mayor Evans, Deputy Mayor Cunningham, colleagues, and friends who may be on YouTube. It is a privilege to appear before City Council today as you consider my appointment for Director of the Department of Human Resource Management. My career encompasses opportunities to serve with nonprofit organizations, ministry service, higher education, federal government, and now local government. My career with the City of Rochester began in September of 2018 as the Affirmative Action Officer. My first project was to implement an online training system in order to provide mandated trainings to all city employees, beginning with sexual harassment and workplace violence trainings in collaboration with the training manager and the safety coordinator. And at that time, we had no idea COVID was going to be here, but because we had that system in place, we could continue with our trainings and move them forward because they were online, because they could no longer be done in person. I started in September 2018, and by March 2019, the proposal was submitted to City Council and approved. And at that time, a quote from a team member who worked on this project with me said, quote, "It makes the job fun when you have the right people in place, all pushing the same agenda." I developed and facilitated as the Affirmative Action Officer the sessions on sexual harassment, as well as diversity, inclusion, and equity. I also was involved early on with the Let's Get Real initiative and completed the 3-year diversity and inclusion annual report for 2019 that was published in February of 2020. I also was responsible for conducting investigations when there were complaints of discrimination, harassment, or workplace behavior, as well as I handled reasonable accommodation requests. I was promoted to Deputy Director of the Department of Human Resource Management in April 2020. My focus was to learn and manage civil service, labor relations, safety, and workday. And as a Deputy Director, I also worked with Sudi Brockport to develop an internship program with the Undergraduate Social Work Department, which was piloted in 2019 and approved by City Council for 5 additional years. And what that program does is works with seniors in the social work program. They are able to intern in various city departments in order to graduate. And I'm hoping that this program will expand over the next 5 years. As the director for the last few weeks, I now lead 9 units, which includes benefits, civil service exam administration, equity, labor relations, payroll, safety, staffing, training, and workday. We collectively manage the city's workday, which is a system, which is our human capital management application, Chronos Dimensions, which is our timekeeper system, NeoGov, which was just launched in November of 2021, which is our applicant tracking system, and Collaboration, which is our online training system. I believe that my various positions in the past 30 years, including the positions I've held with the city since 2018, have prepared me well for this opportunity to serve as the director of the Department of Human Resource Management. I am proud to work with a DHRM team filled with go-getting individuals who continue to bring their best to the table. And I have learned a lot from all of them due to their collective wealth of experience. I put together for the new administration a 2020-2021 highlights on what the Department of Human Resource Management had been accomplishing in this fiscal year. And part of that, I had an opening statement in it, and I would like to share that with you. My vision is that the Department of Human Resource Management would be a strategic business partner with all city departments and with all leadership. We seek to develop and direct an agenda that closely supports all organizational strategies. We are focused on providing extraordinary service in a professional manner. Our workforce plan is to have the right number of people with the right capabilities at the right times and in the right places. I will do my best, if I am confirmed as the director for this department, to develop, empower, support, and care for those we serve and create a citywide team of engaged professional public servants, because I believe that a public service career is one of the most rewarding experiences, both personally and professionally. And in order to achieve this purpose, we in DHRM will continually look for new and innovative ways to improve our processes and our service delivery that place people first. Again, I am deeply honored for the chance to serve as the director of the Department of Human Resource Management and to serve with the incredible women and men who are employed with the city of Rochester. And we seek to uphold the vision, mission, and values of this city government. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. I would like to open up the hearing to questions from the council.
Dr. Nichols, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
My good friend. Good. I'm doing all right, Dr. Nichols. First of all, congratulations to you for this opportunity. I wanted to also acknowledge Mayor Evans for another great pick. You hitting them out of the park here, sir. I just want to ask you, as it relates to Mayor Evans was talked about, the racial equity and leadership program, Executive Order 203, the race commission. I mean, all of these things, a lot of these roads lead back to your office and some of the work that you do as it relates to equity, diversity, looking at culture, all of these types of things. What do you see your vision as being able to kind of facilitate all of that as it relates to all of those documents, all of the departments, and you kind of being the focal point of that work? What is your vision on facilitating those racial equity leadership initiatives?
Thank you, Councilmember Lightfoot. Great question. I think I've already started with that. And I will use the presentation that Mayor Evans asked, and I asked you to give to our senior management team on this past Tuesday. You and I are two people who are still with the city of Rochester who started with Let's Get Real. And I wanted to make sure that especially the new people on senior management understood the history of what we are trying to accomplish here at the city of Rochester with Let's Get Real. It starts with workforce planning, and that is some of the things that we talked about. So the first step was to make sure that senior management understood what it means when we say let's get real, what equity means, because they're going to be doing their budget equity tool and submitting that with the budget, which is a part of the legislation that the city council passed. In addition, I will be meeting with the leaders of each equity team. As you are aware, every department has an equity team, and the equity team is made up of all levels of employees from all levels within their department, from the top to the entry-level positions. It is also encompasses gender, race, and we just want to make sure we have a well-rounded equity team. So I'll be meeting with the leaders of them to bring, some of them are new as well because we've had many retirements. So to bring them up to speed to make sure that they understand what equity is. And also, not only will equity come from the top down, but from those equity teams. We want them to help develop the path in their departments and throughout the city, internally as well as externally, so that we are speaking it, saying it, living it, breathing it in every practice, process, protocol, the positions that we look to fill. So from the bottom up and the top down. So that's what I'm hoping that we will be able to carry out what you started and carry it through for the next, how many years that we are going to be doing this. So it's ingrained in our departments, but we want to make sure it's steadfast and unmovable. And I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, part two of my question is to you, Dr. Nichols. As anything else, things are evolved over time. Policy, practices, procedures, best practices have changed significantly. As it relates to human resources and the work that you do, how do you stay at the cutting edge of things? Looking at, okay, how am I doing cutting edge human resources as it relates to what's happening across the country? How do you keep yourself abreast on cutting edge best practices in the space that you're in?
Well, part of it is I'm a member of the Society for Human Resource Management. I received my certification in January of last year. So I have a wealth across national and international, that people that are in the human resource field that I can talk to. I'm still involved with Tassie Demps, who's the former director. She has 11 years of experience as a director and over 30 years of experience at the city. So she's a good coach for me. I also reach out and work with various HR people locally. And I try and we look to do some more trainings in-house in HR as well as across the city. So we've talked about bringing back the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. I'm involved with the National Coalition Building Institute locally. So we've worked with them in the past, and I worked with them on a volunteer basis. The Center for Dispute Settlement, we have worked with them, and there are some that have retired from there who do work on inclusion and diversity, and we're working with them and trying to match them up with certain departments to help us to overcome any type of discrimination or harassment and educate people. So we will be offering live trainings, online trainings, and I continually try and stay abreast, whether it's reaching out to individuals, being involved in organizations, reading, trainings, whatever I can put my hand to, I will do it. I do it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
How are you, Dr. Nichols?
I am well. How are you?
I am well. I love hearing conversations around valuing employees. So I really appreciated listening to Mayor Evans and how and why he made his decision to pick you, and then listening to your opening statement. So in terms of valuing employees, I know that employees also feel valued when there is a pathway to upward mobility and leadership. So can you talk more about leadership development? Because there are often times where it just hurts my heart sometimes when I hear of people working in the same position for sometimes 10 years, not because they want to be there, but because there is no path forward. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So as you know, we have our human resource or human capital management system, which is Workday. And it's helping us to, instead of using paper, we can all put it in electronically, and all of the information is there. So one of the things that we are hoping to roll out soon that we've been working on for the last year is onboarding. Onboarding is crucial in the beginning stages of an employee's success. The first people that they see are usually, after their hiring manager or whoever interviews them, is the Department of Human Resource Management. So we want to make sure that we have a year-long onboarding process for all employees. From once they find out that they have met all the qualifications and they will be joining the city workforce, all the way through career development, through retirement. So after we do onboarding, we also our next step, and this is all from the Baker-Tilly study that was done a few years ago, is career development. So I can give you an example. In Workday, we will be able to, as you've seen, we put photos in so everybody can see everyone. What we also want to implement as a part of the onboarding is what we call talent cards. And in Workday, a talent card is very similar to like a LinkedIn page, maybe a little like a mini version of it, where employees will be able to put in their trainings, their experience, their skills. And our hope is that when hiring managers and upper management or any supervisor is looking to fill a vacancy, they will look internally first. So for example, if they were looking for a training manager, they would be able to go into Workday, look up the skill set that they're looking for, and a list of employees would pop up. And they could look at what they put on their talent card. They could possibly talk to that supervisor and probably recruit from inside first. So that's another thing we're working on. Currently, we have our supervisory leadership training, and that is a 10-week program. We just started the 4th cohort on yesterday. Mayor Evans and Deputy Mayor Cunningham came, welcomed them. Currently, there are 18 in that class. They're from, I'd say 90% of the departments have at least one person in that training. And it is focused on teaching them leadership skills and like succession planning, how to be a good supervisor. I can't even name it all right now because I'm a little nervous, but and how to be a good supervisor. We want people to go through that 10-week program, and then they have to have a project at the end that they have to do. And then 3 months later, the consultant that we hired, the Jackman Group, brings that cohort back together and asks them, how far have you got on the plan that you put together? So we want to expand that. And once COVID is over, enlarge those classes, because right now it's a hybrid, and get more people funneled into that program so that we have people that are coming in that desire to be a supervisor, are already supervisors, but sometimes they didn't get the training that they needed, so that they, as the mayor said earlier, can move up and can move out within various departments of the city. And we're building our next generation of leaders in city government. So those are just some of the things that we have started. We are in the process of implementing, and down the road, what we're hoping to implement in the next year or so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Martin.
So I was made aware of an illegal practice in human resources where when people were trying to negotiate higher pay, they were asked to submit their pay stubs to negotiate that higher pay. I want to ask about how you plan on making sure that policy is no longer implemented because it is illegal, and your thoughts about how that went down, or what do you plan on doing to make sure that doesn't happen when people are applying for a job and are trying to negotiate higher pay?
Thank you, Councilmember Martin. I am not aware of that. And after this confirmation hearing, if you could give me more details, as only being the director for the last 28 days, that may have happened before I came on. If it happened since I came here, I want to definitely know about it. But you are right, it is not appropriate that is happening. And I will make sure that that does not happen in going forward. I will talk to my staff and look into that. But no, that should not be happening.
I really appreciate that answer. Thank you, Dr. Nichols.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. I appreciate you coming before us today. You mentioned something that made me perk up and hit my interest here. We have a difficult time recruiting people of color and women for careers in public safety, police and fire. You mentioned that you are piloting a method, a system whereby you will be looking at folks to promote from within. In some conversations with the proposed fire chief and some other folks, it was brought up that there is a challenge with people being on the list and having to wait a period of time. Are you interested, and this is actually more for the mayor, I guess, than for you, would you be interested in looking at a mechanism whereby we could start looking at our folks in rec and in DES and helping them to make that transition into police and fire if they have that interest, but also being affirmative and making them aware of the opportunities that exist?
Thank you, Councilmember Patterson. Yes, I think we have a few from DES, I believe, that are either in the police class right now or fire. So I don't know the racial makeup, but there are opportunities. What I found as a affirmative action officer and the deputy director is that a lot of departments don't know what other opportunities there are in other departments. So if we can start to have information sessions, lunch and learns, where people get together, of course, after COVID, or maybe we can do them on Zoom, where different departments can come on and talk about this is what we do. They don't really know what the other departments do. These are other opportunities. And somebody may want to be a police officer or even a 911 dispatcher or a firefighter and they don't know. Even though they work here, they don't know. So part of our part in HR is to learn how to educate the employees. So that's something that we could do, as well as, so that's internally what we can do. And then we need to expand our efforts externally with career pathways to public safety. Because of COVID, that kind of slowed down and stopped. And we're hoping, and we're going to be meeting with the people that were the school district, et cetera, to try and get that back up and running and work with our young people and our community and try and figure out the best way to get them into that so that they can become firefighters and police officers and dispatchers and telecommunicators and ECD. So I think there's an opportunity for education and information sharing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you. Dr. Nichols, I just want to expand upon Councilmember Patterson's question for a second to be just general recruitment. This is where we are at an interesting moment in workforce generally in this country right now. And I'm assuming that there are a lot of departments that have a lot of vacancies, and I'm sure recruitment is challenging at the city just like it is anywhere else. And I'm wondering what strategies you have to address that from a general perspective.
Thank you, Councilmember Gruber. Yes, it is very challenging. Right now, the staffing unit is running on empty not only because we have a new administration and we're bringing in new people, but we have various vacancies. So we are working very hard. We try and get the word out into the local community. Not only, and that's why we have our applicant tracking system, NeoGov, because that takes the job announcements and it goes on governmentjobs.com. So that's national, right? So we're getting our positions out locally, we're getting them out nationally. We also try to post our positions on Handshake, which is a system that most of the colleges around the country use. We make sure that every HBCU and HACU, which is Hispanic colleges and universities, those have over 25% Hispanic population, at least 25% and over Hispanic population. We try to get as many of our job postings out to them. And we also can work with departments on if there are certain associations that might charge a fee to have the job posting placed in their newsletter or on their site. They usually have like a job listing site on their webpage. Then we work with the departments. We look at their budgets because that money comes out of their budget, not of HR's, but we help them to narrow down what are some good places we can put the advertisement out there to hopefully get a larger, diverse pool of candidates. So that's some of what we're doing. And let me know if I didn't answer your question.
No, you did. Thank you. I have two other questions before they're brief, I think. Before I go there, I just want to say, that all of those things make sense. The national government jobs site, I'm sure, is helpful, but I would imagine there's a ton of people who are qualified for a lot of government jobs who've never looked and thought about government jobs before. And of course, what's even more interesting for us is that we also offer just I'm incredibly proud of the benefits package that the city of Rochester offers. And I really hope that we can find new and creative ways to encourage people who have not thought about government jobs before to consider it. And it sounds like that you're in the same place. Just two other quick questions. One is, you've talked a lot about Workday, and over my 4 years on council, we have spent so much time and money getting those systems, Workday, et cetera, updated and up to speed. Are you comfortable and content and satisfied with where we are with the software that you're working with from HR?
I'm going to say no when it comes to Workday. I think we are just touching a small piece of all the things that Workday can do. There are many companies across Rochester that use Workday, and I've seen what Workday can do for us. But one of the issues is in HR, we have 1.5 staff that are in charge of implementing all of the different things that Workday can do for over 3,300 employees. And so I've talked to the mayor about this, so he's not surprised about what I'm about to say. In our budget submission, we will be asking for an additional staff person because we have to integrate Workday with all the other IT systems so everything flows decently and in order. But there's so much more we can do with Workday that will make our systems and our employees' experiences efficient and effective. Probationary reviews that we implemented, the talent cards I talked about, the onboarding process. There's so much more that we can do. So no, I'm not satisfied, but that is a high priority. And Mayor Evans is very aware that that's a high priority for me and our team.
But it sounds like you're satisfied with the software we have. You just want to be able to execute it even greater.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Great. My last question is, I'll keep it simple because I could take this in a lot of different ways, but this is probably a particularly difficult time to be in HR related to COVID-19 and the consistently changing requirements that are coming down at a federal and a state level. What do you think the role of an HR department ought to be while we're in the middle of a pandemic right now?
So right when I became deputy director, COVID was just starting to rage. And in HR, we had to put aside a lot of things and projects we were working on because we had to understand from, like you said, from a federal, a local level, and a state level, what are we supposed to do? This was all new to us. Every morning for the first hour of every day for about a month or two, all our direct reports, we came together and we said, how do we do this? What do we do? And we put a whole process in place that I think worked then and is working very well. As you know, we had to send everybody home and we didn't have a telework program. So we had to develop a telework. Luckily we had online training. So people were able to do online trainings and get a lot of information online. We collaborated with IT. We are constantly reading the newest information from the federal, state, and our county health department and sitting down and saying, how is the best way to roll this out? And we work very closely, especially in the last, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks. We've been working very closely with law to make sure that we have understood everything correctly, and the communications department to try and roll it out so that it's very understandable, because when you read what comes down, it's if then, if this, then this. And we really have to break it down so our employees can understand how to do this and how to do that. So I think since March, April of 2020, we've done a phenomenal job of getting that message out and to make sure that we're following the process and procedures, but we also have a heart for the employees, that when they call us or their supervisor calls us and says, I just tested positive. Okay, we're going to work with you. Here's the leave you can take. Here's what the latest thing is. Keep us posted, making sure confidentiality is held. Make sure we work with DES to make sure that the departments are deep cleaning the different areas. If we get more than one person in an area that has tested positive, we deep clean it at night. We make sure that that's happening. So HR is a major partner in making sure that COVID is handled in the most appropriate manner and all of our employees are safe.
Vice President Lupien.
Yes, hello, Dr. Nichols.
Hi.
Following along the same line of COVID practices, I know that this is probably a decision that's left up to department heads, but in terms of from the HR point of view, how do you feel about, being able to maximize the flexible time for employees if they need to work from home, to only come into the office, certain days a week, instead of having every employee at their desk during these times?
Thank you, Vice President Lupien. So once we learn we need to have some kind of telework plan after we had to send everyone home. So we had to put something in place. And ever since that spring of 2020, each department has worked on, and even Mayor Evans going forward has said, each department determines what's best for their department. And when we have, when we first, it was everybody went home. And then after there was a little bit of less of it, I guess you could say, we gradually came back 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 1 day a week. We're all back. And then there was a surge. And so we went back, some departments went back to 1 day or 2 days, just so that, because much of the city, as you know, we're in cubicles, we're not in offices. And so we wanted to keep our employees safe. So as the fluctuations in COVID were happening, we worked with departments to stay very attuned to the needs of the department to make sure that the work was still getting done, but that the work could also be done at home if we needed to go back to 1 day or 2 days or 3 days. So we have to constantly watch that and work with each department and where they are, because each department is different. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Pio.
All right, I understand you're not in charge of customer service at City Hall, but the vast amount of calls that I get are pertaining to the fact that a lot of our constituents are coming in and getting just poor customer service, or they're getting attitudes, or they're getting the runaround. So how are we going to help hire the people, or what are you going to do to help alleviate that issue about people coming into City Hall and not getting the answers that they need, or leaving feeling as if they did not get the service that they deserved?
And are you speaking, Councilmember for the entire city or just HR?
That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure if you have any input on that. How can we hire and make sure we're training people? How can we train people to make sure we're taking customer service to that next level? How are we going to hold people accountable to that customer service level?
So I'm going to go from a perspective of citywide. I believe that customer service starts from the top down. And so if your leadership in your department practices customer service, your employees will see it. So that's one way. It has to be, an example has to be set. From an HR perspective, we can work with departments, and because of our training component within HR, we can have trainings on customer service. I think that a part of the new employee orientation going forward, once we have a training manager, because we have a vacancy right now, we're interviewing right now. But one of the things I would like to see implemented is customer training, not lumped into new employee orientation, but right after it for every employee that comes into the city, because it's crucial. Because if we have good customer service and all employees feel valued and appreciated on their job, then they will be able, that will go out into the community. So that level of customer service is very, very important, because we need to feel good about what we're doing. And when we portray customer service and a good customer service, it oozes out to the entire community, and it changes Rochester. So I think there's a culture change that needs to happen. And there's many ways that we can do that. But again, it starts with the leaders. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. So, this concludes our questions at the confirmation hearing for Dr. Nichols. Dr. Nichols, thank you very much for answering all of our questions.
Thank you.
You may be excused.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
So at this moment, we're going to just take a brief 5-minute break. I'm sorry to keep Commissioner Miller waiting, but 5 minutes, we'll reconvene at 5:50. Thank you. You can just turn your cameras off and be on pause. Okay, everyone should be coming back. We'll resume momentarily. All right, so we will finish our hearings with Commissioner Dana Miller as the mayor's selection for Commissioner of the Department of Neighborhood and Business Development. Mayor Evans, would you like to make a statement regarding the appointment of Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you all for your patience during these hearings. I greatly appreciate it, and I appreciate your time. Dana K. Miller is, I'm putting his whole government out there, including his middle initial. I've known Dana Miller for almost 30 years. I want to say we came up together, although he may be a little bit older than me, but as a youth leader in the community, I was a part of something on the southwest part of the city when I was a student at Wilson Magnet High School called the Neighbors Building Neighbors program. And many of you that have been around Rochester may know about that program. Dana, I selected Dana for this position. He's more than qualified, obviously, right? Former business executive, former nonprofit executive, worked in city government. But Dana gets something that is very important to me, which is neighborhoods. And when I first met Dana, he was a neighborhood leader. He was president of the 19th Ward Association. He was part of the Southwest Common Council, Sector 4 Planning Committee. And I was this young youth representative where we were trying to transform neighborhoods throughout the city. Mayor Johnson was mayor at the time. Dana complained about something, and they said, all right, you complaining about something, you need to go get on the planning commission. I believe it was either the planning commission or zoning board, one of them, Dana, I can't remember which one. But I want to say the planning commission, and he got involved and he got on that. And then Dana was coaxed into running for city council, and he gave service there when he didn't have to, when he could have just stayed home and put his feet up. So I always recognize that, but I always love the fact that he puts neighborhoods at the center of everything that he does. It is important to me. He tells the story. Obviously, when he first moved into the 19th Ward, the former president of the 19th Ward Association, who has since passed on, went to Dana and said, wait a minute, you new to the neighborhood? Which street you live on? And then he became his street representative for the 19th Ward Association, and then eventually became the president. I tell that story because it encapsulates one of the important parts of the Evans administration, our administration, and our 8 values. And one of them is citizen priority. In addition to collaboration, I talk about the citizen priority, and it says that the administration will place a primary focus on being citizen-centered by engaging, enabling, and involving citizens as partners. And I tease Dana all the time. I say, Dana, I'm looking for Neighbors Building Neighbors 2.0. We don't know what we're going to call it yet, but we want to make sure that we get our neighborhoods feeling as though they are back connected to City Hall. If there's an idea that they want to have, how can we make that happen? So neighborhood and business development is more than that, but that is just such a key component of what we do. How can we breathe life into our neighborhood service centers and make sure that they're really neighborhood empowerment centers, right, for our residents? Dana gets all that. He understands that. He knows that we have to train a new generation of community leaders that can one day go on and become the next Dana Millers or the next Malik Evanses. And that starts by also engaging these folks in their neighborhoods on where they are. He understands the importance of housing, the importance of code enforcement. All these things are important, the importance of customer service. NBD is a very complex department with so many different parts. As I know from being on city council, working for city council, and even watching city council, that's where a lot of the questions come in, right? The NBD, right? NBD, along with the police department, are 2 of probably the big areas where a lot of the conversations are generated. Dana Miller is a son of Rochester, from Jefferson High School to the Simon School MBA. He is more than qualified for this position. I would be honored if you would appoint him to this position. And he has already hit the ground running. And I'm excited about what he's going to do to really help us take our neighborhoods to the next level. So I'm honored, Mr. President, to introduce to some and present to many Dana K. Miller, who is my nominee for Commissioner of the Neighborhood and Business Development area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Evans. Mr. Miller, welcome. Would you like to start us off with an opening statement?
Yes, I absolutely would. Unfortunately, Mayor Evans read most of it, but but I will go through it anyway. Thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate this opportunity to talk to you all together. And as I sit here where I am, I reflect upon my time in your seats. Most of the time in the seat that Vice President Lupien is sitting in, for a long time in Councilmember Martin's seat, and even a short time in President Melendez's seat. It was a great experience in public service. I would also note that in much of my adult life, I've been dedicated to public service. I tested homes for lead paint when I was a teen. As the mayor said, at age 20, as a brand new homeowner, signed up to be a part of the 19th Ward Community Association and spent the next 20 years in leadership roles there. I marched against drugs on North Clinton Avenue with RAIN, the Rochesterians Against Illegal Narcotics, and with Greater Rochester Fights Back. I was appointed to the Environmental Commission by Mayor Tom Ryan, and also to the Planning Commission by Mayor Bill Johnson. And I did lead the Sector 4 Common Council alongside Council Member Willie Lightfoot's dad, Willie Lightfoot. And the two of us worked very closely for that. And then actually, Willie Lightfoot Sr. pushed me to run for office, told me that I would be a good person to run for office. And I thought about that and decided to do it, and ended up being elected citywide to sit where you are. So as we know, public service and volunteering is satisfying, but it doesn't always pay as well as we would like. So I did also, during all that time, work full-time in technical and executive positions at Xerox, and then 10 years as vice president of Rochester Area Community Foundation. So the job as commissioner that we're here to discuss today is a continuation of my dedication to public service. NBD is a team of 152 professionals who are dedicated to public service. We work closely with residents and business owners across the city. We provide loans and grants to recruit, retain, and grow businesses big and small. We help create affordable housing for both rental and owner occupancy. We provide help for the homeless, services for eviction prevention, rent assistance, foreclosure prevention. We provide permits for buildings. We inspect them regularly to ensure they're safe. We provide key neighborhood services in all 4 quadrants. And we're restarting a successful senior meals program in the next few days. We manage all city-owned real estate. We manage the zoning process. We offer rehab services to owner occupants, and we demolish blighted structures. We provide great service, but I would like us to provide excellent service, reducing the time to solve problems, bringing creativity to improving processes, increasing our customer satisfaction, and being viewed positively by all. I thank you for your time today. I really thank you, Mayor Evans, for your confidence in me, and I look forward to your questions and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I will now open up the hearing to questions, and we'll start off with Council Member Harris.
Thank you very much, President Melendez. I'd like to say thank you, Dana Miller, for stepping up to the plate for this position. I'm looking forward to working with you. My question is, can you speak to how what is your plan to make sure that the 2034 plan is not just a bookcase ornament? As for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the 15-year-old, it's a 15-year-old comprehensive plan to improve our community housing, transportation, zoning, and it encompasses pretty much all things related to the city, including historic preservation. Can you speak to how do you plan to make sure that we continue on that path?
Yes, thank you, Council Member Harris. I'm happy to talk about that because, as you know, I was very, very much involved in creating the 2010 plan and was involved in also creating the 2034 plan. It's an important plan because it's 15 years and it takes us to our 200th anniversary as a city. So the way we incorporate the 2034 plan in everything we do in NBD is everybody has a copy of the plan. We have the implementation sheet, and everything we do, we try to tie back to one of the elements of the plan. Every item that we submit to council, you will see
is tagged with which part of the 2034 plan it relates to. Every item that we work on, when you see our key performance indicators, our KPIs, all of our KPIs tie back to an element in the plan. So it's not just a document that sits on the shelf for us. It's a document that is actually a living document that we're referring to on a regular basis to make sure that what we're doing is supporting something in the plan, and what is in the plan is something that we're trying to find a way to push forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I mean, that's one of the things that this council has been worried about or just concerned about. We've expressed that in the past. I have a second question. What is your vision for encouraging property owners to participate in the certificate of occupancy process? As you know, that's been a contentious issue throughout. There has been complaints coming to my office as well as other council members' office that properties have not met the certificate of occupancy code. And what is your vision for that?
Well, and thank you for that, because I get those calls as well, as you can imagine. And, the C of O process is not optional. It is not something that property owners get to choose to work with or not. The challenge that we have with the C of O process is that we have so many properties in the city that it is difficult to stay on top of all of them. And that's made even more of a problem by the fact that we have an antiquated system that we use to track that. We're looking forward to the implementation of the new land management system for public sector to help us with that, to be able to get real-time data, to be able to pull reports, to be able to find out. I mean, I asked a question earlier today about properties without C of Os, and every time we have a question like that, it becomes a research project as opposed to being able to just pull information up. So we really do have to focus on that because, and I say this a lot, our city is really a collection of properties that we've drawn a boundary around. If we don't manage those properties, then we really don't have a city. And we have to make sure that our properties are held to the highest standards. They have to meet the C of O. They have to have inspections every 3 years for 1 to 3 families, or 6 years for every 1 to 3 families, and every 3 years beyond that. We have to make sure that's happening, that it's happening regularly, that our inspectors are well-trained and are doing this correctly, and that people are not getting away with not having C of O. So we will focus on that, and I'm really going to pull very quickly everybody together from inspection and compliance and really reiterate how important this is.
Thank you for that. I'm looking forward to the land management system. If you could please just make sure that there's a work session done on that so we can get full details of it. And thank you again. And congratulations on your appointment. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Smith.
Hello, Mr. Miller. How are you?
I'm doing well, Councilmember Smith. How are you today?
I am well. So first, let me say thank you, because as a new council person, during my first legislative process, I found you to be very attentive, patient, and understanding. And so first, I wanted to say thank you for that. And secondly, just to say similarly, my public health career also started in lead, going door to door, checking kids, testing kids for lead poisoning. And I think moving forward, I believe of all of the folks that we have spoken with, I believe you are going to have the most challenging role. Statewide, I think it's public knowledge that we are in the middle of a housing crisis. According to what I read in the 2034 plan, the housing diversity in Rochester is such that the housing needs vary according to the section of the city that you live in. Homelessness and evictions are on the rise, and all of these things work together to really impact the stability of our neighborhoods. And so my question for you, in terms of, you talked a little bit about program excellency and creativity. So how will you move in the midst of all of this conflict to ensure that we are not creating processes, best practices, and policies that are going to excessively benefit some while extremely harming others?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Smith. That's a very important question, because as we know, for the last 100 or more years, the system has been structured to do exactly that. And when we go back to 1939 and look at the redlining maps and look at how certain areas of our city were redlined and other areas were not, where loans were not made in the redlined areas. And when you look at those reports from the Homeowners Loan Corporation, they even used words in there like, this area has a high presence of Negroes. This is what was done. And that still carries through to this day. Unfortunately, the areas that were redlined in 1939 are still the areas that have the lowest housing values today in our city. We have to fix that. And part of that is using some of the ARPA money that we have to do a program called Buy the Block. And it's about greenlining those redlined areas, finding ways to take those areas that were redlined back in 1939 that are still challenged areas today and build new housing in those areas for people who can then live in those houses as owner occupants, but those would be folks who might be of lower income levels, which is not something that's typically done. Typically, if you're a lower income level person, you're pushed into rental housing. What we really want to do is make sure that people have the opportunity to purchase a home, to create wealth, to build equity, to have money that could be used to send children to college or to start a business or other kinds of things that would be helpful. So we're looking at that program as a means of green lighting the redlined areas. But there are also other things we have to do. Clearly, homeownership is not for everyone. And for those who they would prefer not to own their own home, we have to keep building more units for those people. And there are hundreds and hundreds of units in the pipeline right now that we will continue to support through our department. So, we understand that problem. We are focused on it, and we will continue to work to push forward to make sure that there are ownership options and rental options, but at all income levels. We can't exclude anyone.
Thank you. And I am certainly hoping that you are going to have an open door policy, because I believe I will be stopping in to chat with you often.
Okay. And anyone that knows me knows that unless I'm in my office meeting with someone, my door is always open. That's always the way it's been.
Councilmember Gruber.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Miller. I have 3 questions, and I'll try to make them as brief as possible. But the first is related to code enforcement. I want to expand a little bit upon what Councilmember Harris asked. I had the opportunity early in my tenure on council to join a delegation from Cleveland who came to Rochester to learn a little bit about our C of O process. And so I've seen firsthand what is true, which is that we have a world-class C of O program in certain ways. I've also seen our C of O program allow for incredibly inappropriate and inexcusable housing pass through the system. Both those things, I think, can be true at the same time. And I think far too often we've rested on the laurels of the really good parts of our C of O program. What do we need to do specifically, and what will we do under your leadership to fix what is wrong with our C of O program?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Groove, for that question. One of the first things that I did when I joined council was I came to the then commissioner and I said, I would like to see this inspection process firsthand. So I went out with an inspector and we spent a day going through houses and actually doing the inspection, me essentially watching him do the inspection. And, it gave me some real insight to what the job is. But the challenge that I think we are having right now is that we don't have everything completely leveled up across the whole operation. There are some people who are doing a fantastic job, and some people perhaps that need some more training or some more experience. And so I am working with Kurt Martin, who heads that area and is part of my department, to make sure that we, first of all, can ensure that everyone has the appropriate training, that they know what they're inspecting, that they're inspecting all the same things, so that an inspector in Councilmember Pio's area doesn't get a different inspection from someone in Councilmember Lupien's area. They should not be inspecting different things or the same things differently. Everything has to be the same across the board. Otherwise, we end up with people saying, hey, you cited this for me and my friend owns an apartment on the other side, you didn't cite it for them. We can't have that. We have to make sure that everything is being done the same across the board. So that is an area that I will be focusing on very, very intently.
Thank you. And I also hope that could mean the additional code enforcement personnel, but that's a question for budget season, not for today. My second question is related to development. In the last 4 years, there were several development projects that occurred, and I only speak about the last 4 years because that's all I know as a council member. There were a couple developments that occurred where there was concern from the community nearby that there wasn't appropriate engagement or notification, and certainly all rules were followed, but that oftentimes is not enough to really engage the community. Do you have a couple of quick ideas to share for how we can do better under your leadership in terms of community engagement on development projects?
Well, actually, one of your council members helped us greatly in that. Councilmember Patterson looked at that a few years back and said, you're only notifying people within a 300-foot radius. You need to make that 600 feet. That was changed by you, and now we notify more people when something is being proposed in their area. So that's the first step, is notifying more people. The second thing that we need to do, which is a little more difficult today, but certainly is still able to be accomplished, is making sure that more of the information is made public. And that's a little challenging because as you know, and as you all know, developers tend to want to hold things very close when they're proposing something because they don't want the price to go up on properties they're planning to buy. They don't want competition for the same parcel. They really try to hold these things close, but that conflicts directly with our ability to make sure that the public has as much information as they'd like to have. And I can think of a couple of the projects maybe that you're thinking of. I know Cobb's Hill was one. I know that the Colgate Rochester Divinity School was another, where the neighbors felt like they didn't really have enough information, or they didn't have enough information early enough. And the challenge with these projects is always that no matter what you want to do, there's always going to be somebody who's strongly in favor of it, and there's always going to be someone who's strongly opposed to it. And so what we have to look at is, does it meet the requirements for the area? Does it meet our zoning? Are the building heights and masses appropriate? And is it something that we can legally approve? And if it's something that we can legally approve, then we're obligated to do that. But if there are any mitigating factors that have to be put into that to help satisfy the neighbors, we're also obligated to do that. So we will continue to do that, but notifying more people and trying to publicize the process a little bit better is what we will certainly work on.
Thank you. My last question is in relation to our neighborhood service centers. If you could just talk about your vision for changes or improvements to the neighborhood service centers.
Well, the neighborhood service centers are they're a very important resource to our city. I mean, as many of you may remember, they started out as neighborhood empowerment teams or net offices. And to me, the change from empowerment to service was perhaps problematic, because what I think we really need to do is we need to empower our neighborhoods. We have very strong and vibrant neighborhoods. Most of those have strong neighborhood groups. And what we did essentially was we said, rather than empowering you to help fix your neighborhood, we're going to take that empowerment away from you and we're just going to provide services to you. And I think that change from empowerment to service was perhaps not as helpful as it could have been. I'd like to see us move more towards helping empower the neighborhoods, but providing them with the resources that they need to do that. And those could be financial and they could be personnel, but helping the neighborhoods. In the neighborhood you live in, the Susan B. Anthony neighborhood, is a very, very strong neighborhood. It has a very strong neighborhood association. Dawn Noto does a great job of running that group. But I'm sure that if I said to Dawn, could you use some more resources, Dawn would not say no. And if we could get more resources to Dawn so that she could do more, it would take some of the strain off of the neighborhood service center and allow the neighborhood to be more successful than it already is. So I think we've got to move more towards helping the neighborhoods help themselves and providing them with the resources they need to do so.
Thank you.
Vice President Lupien, followed by Councilmember Martin.
Yes. Hi, Commissioner Miller. How are you?
I'm good, Council Vice President Lupien.
My question is around alternate housing. I know this is something that you've talked about before. And as you mentioned, different areas of the city have different housing needs. Not everyone is going to be a traditional single-family homeowner, but there are other options such as, multifamily, sharing of the homeownership with a cooperative. You mentioned mommunes. I'd love for you to talk about what your vision is for expanding the options of housing that we're providing for our city.
Well, most housing is allowed in our city. People often fall back on I don't think you can get this through zoning, but actually, as long as it meets the New York State Building Code, there is really no restriction on housing. So we're looking at lots of things. We have a group right now, you're probably familiar with them, that is very interested in tiny housing. They want to build units of 384 square feet, all on kind of one parcel of land. We're working very closely with them right now to figure out how we can make that happen. It's a city-owned parcel, so it would be up to us to sell the parcel to them. They actually want it sold to the Community Land Trust, which would then allow it to become affordable housing in perpetuity. So we're working with them on the idea of tiny houses. We're also, you mentioned mommunes, and everybody might not be familiar with that, but that's where you have a group of 2 or more moms who may have children, but could live in a shared place that maybe has separate living quarters, but a shared eating and socializing area. And the moms can help take care of the other's kids. They can watch children while others are at work, but it provides this opportunity for single moms to have that structure that allows them to be able to raise their children. So mamus, we've talked with a group that wants to do co-housing, and we're certainly open to that. So there are lots of opportunities for housing, and we're not focused on eliminating any of those. What we're focused on is trying to find the best options that will allow the most people to be housed in a way that they can afford, and it's in a quality housing unit. So, we're open to anything. As I mentioned before, by the block, we're going to use ARPA funds for the tiny houses. We may have to provide some support for that. It may be, support in terms of the cost of the land. It may be support in some of the construction costs, but we'll be working with the tiny house folks. And certainly anyone that comes to us with a proposal, we will listen to it, we will treat it seriously, and we'll do everything we can to make it happen.
Thank you. And I'd love to see, something from the city to, incentivizing or facilitating it in some way, other types of housing, and the expansion of how we utilize land trusts to create permanent affordability.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Martin?
So a lot of our conversation has been focused on neighborhoods and housing, which is great. I'm wondering, with your wealth of experience being on council and being in this role, what are your thoughts about a proposal to separate neighborhoods and business development into two committees?
I think that, well, I haven't heard that proposal, so that's the first time hearing that, but so I'm anxious to hear more about that. We don't really exist separately. Businesses are in neighborhoods and neighborhoods have businesses. I think they actually work together quite well. And in fact, as you know, most of our business corridors are not just business corridors, because most of our neighborhood streets have storefronts on the bottom level and housing on the upper level or upper levels. So it's very difficult to separate neighborhoods and businesses in the way that our city is structured. If you're out in Henrietta and you look at Jefferson Road, I mean, it's all businesses. You don't have to worry about neighborhoods. Nobody thinks of Jefferson Road as a neighborhood. But if you look at Jefferson Avenue is a neighborhood. It's, the businesses are there, the neighbors are there, the folks live above the businesses. There are single family homes interspersed with businesses. So it's very hard, I think, to separate those. We do provide different services to each. We provide loans and grants to businesses. We provide rehab dollars to homes. But one of the things that we are also proposing through the ARPA funding is we've been for a while, because of the funding source through community development block grants, we've been prohibited from helping business owners who own their building and have apartments upstairs. CDBG doesn't see that as a viable option for support, but the ARPA dollars will allow that. So for folks that have a storefront and housing above, we will be able to help them now where we couldn't help them before. So that should provide a lot of benefit to places like Jefferson Avenue and North Clinton and Hudson and Joseph and Genesee. I mean, we will be able to do things with the ARPA dollars that we were not able to do before, and I'm hoping to see a great improvement. But if we separated those two things, I'm not sure that synergy would happen. So I'd have to hear more about it, but just having heard it for the first time, I'm not feeling really strongly about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate your insight, Commissioner Miller. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member.
Commissioner Miller, just going back to the NSC conversation, I've seen various forms of neighborhood service centers over the years. And back in my early years when I started as a grassroots organizer, there was so much more energy put into investing in neighborhoods out of the centers. For example, when we had the NBN model, which that actually predates me a little bit, but there was money for sectors in the city where neighborhood groups could then come together and prioritize what they wanted to see, very similar to like a participatory budgeting process. Could you maybe speak to, and I know that we don't have, resources to do everything, but maybe your position of neighborhood service centers to go back to a model where there is more empowerment and maybe more resources that could be allocated and prioritized by neighborhood residents.
Yes, thank you, Council President. You're absolutely right. And when I was the leader of Sector 4, when we had NBN and we had 10 sectors, each sector was provided with $5,000 a year from the city. For 10 sectors, of course, that's $50,000. And we were able to use that $5,000 for essentially anything we wanted. And what we did was we often used it for beautification of the area. We used it really at that time to get information out to the area, used it to publish Southwest Community News, a newspaper that went out by young people who hand carried it door to door to make sure that everybody knew what was going on in the neighborhood. We used it for things like banners and signage. So, in the grand scheme of things, in a $500+ million budget, $50,000 isn't that much. But to a neighborhood association, $50,000 is like I won the lottery. Even $500 is like I won the lottery. So we have to really take a look at how we're budgeting and how we're allocating resources. Because, I think the mayor said it, I think I said it, and I think we all agree that we have to find ways to empower neighbors, and part of that is providing them with resources. So I'm strongly in favor of that, and I'm sure that as we go through this budget cycle, we will have the opportunity to find a way to make that happen.
Thank you. Councilmember Peel?
Yes, thank you. Quick question here. How do you believe you can improve the timeliness for how long it takes from permit application to approval? I have some investors in the Northwest specifically, obviously, that one in particular has been able to renovate an entire building, get someone in there, a commercial unit, rent it out, operating for weeks before he even got an answer to his permit question. So how can we improve that system? How can you improve that system to make it so that it's maybe a digital application or something that's going to be a faster turnaround, whether it's a yes or no, just a faster turnaround?
Well, thank you, Councilmember Pio. You're absolutely right. And when I said, when I started that we provide great service, but I'd like us to provide excellent service. I mean, what you described isn't even great service. So I can't even say that experience is unique and that it even met any requirements that we would have. That's a poor level of service that was provided, and we have to do better. It's been said that government works at the speed of government, and that's not the same as the speed of business. What we have to do is we have to, to use one of my computer terms, we have to increase our clock speed. We have to do things faster in government to try to catch up with the speed of business. We cannot have somebody sitting around waiting for hours, days, weeks for the permits that they need to move forward when costs are escalating every day, when delays are causing them to lose potential revenue. We just can't do it. So I don't want to hang everything on this, but part of the solution is land management. One of the first things that we'll be rolling out actually within the next month or so is online applications. That's one of the first pieces of it that will be available. We're testing the online applications now. And once it's through the testing, then they will go live and people will be able to apply for all of those kinds of things without having to come down here, without having to go to the permit counter and wait in line, without having to go through any process. We're also looking in the budget for digital plan tables. These would be, kind of really big flat surfaces that can allow the building plans to be brought up right on a screen and can be reviewed without somebody having to come down here and bring a roll of drawings. We'll be able to have the drawings up electronically, make any comments, and get those things approved much more quickly. So we're working very hard to increase the speed of our department, particularly in permits and in buildings, and also in inspection and compliance. So we're working on that. I can tell you that I'm not satisfied with the way it's going, but I am optimistic about us being able to make a very, very dramatic change very, very soon.
Thank you.
Councilmember Patterson. Mike, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Pending, can you talk a little bit about business improvement districts, what they are, and what your vision might be for them going forward?
Sure, Councilmember Patterson. As you know, business improvement district is a district that receives additional city services based on an extra allocation that's made against all of the properties that are in the district. So we currently have, for example, a business improvement district in High Falls, the High Falls bid, and each of the property owners in High Falls has an additional allocation that's charged against their property tax that pays for additional services at High Falls, cleaning, and they have some very challenging cobblestone roads over there that need extra work. They have a lot of visitors that come to see the falls, and so that often leads to needing additional garbage pickup or cleaning. So the High Falls bid has been very successful. There's been talk for many years about creating a downtown bid, and there's more information being discussed around that idea right now. There is the existing structure that we have that provides for additional cleaning, but there's an interest in expanding the services of the downtown entity to also involve programming and making sure that there's something happening downtown, that as we get some things completed with Rock the Riverway, as we get some things completed with the aqueduct, as we get the convention center expanded, that we have opportunities for more things happening, and provide more use of Parcel 5 so that it doesn't essentially just sit there empty all the time, except when there's a jazz festival or somebody's playing wiffle ball. But we could actually find ways to program the space so that what we really need is something, and I learned this when I went to Buffalo and looked at what they did with Canal Side. And we talked with them, and they have a Canal Side entity that runs Canal Side. And what they said is, what we want is for people to just come to Canal Side. We don't want them to stop and wonder, I wonder if there's anything happening at the Canal Side tonight. Should I go or not? Should I try to find out what's happening? No, just come. There's always something happening. And we have to get to that point with our downtown. There's got to be always something happening downtown. And anybody that's working downtown would know at the end of the day, I can leave my office building, there's something that's happening downtown. It's going to be cool, whatever it is, but there's something happening. For people who are outside of the city, they can say, let me just go downtown tonight. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I know there's something happening. We've got to get to that point so that there's something happening. And a bid would help us with that by providing the resources to do programming, to do that extra cleanup, to do the removal of garbage, to take care of graffiti, to make sure the bus shelters are clean. We need to do that, because if people are going to come, they have to know that it's going to be a pleasant and high quality experience.
Well, to that point, our past colleague, Matt Haig, introduced a concept to council called the Culture of Vibrancy. And I love that idea, but my challenge and my concern is that when we look at the sidewalks in Rochester, not talking about winter, folks, just talking about bright sunny day, wow, we don't have a culture of vibrancy on our sidewalks overall across this city, specifically and particularly in downtown. What's your thinking on that?
Well, as you know, one of my hobbies is history, and particularly the history of Rochester. We have a tremendous amount of cultural heritage in this city that many people would not know of. I mean, we could take, not you, but we could take many people in the city and ask them about the location where the Radisson Hotel is, and if they knew that Austin Stewart back in the 1800s was the first African-American to have a business in Rochester, and he had a general store. Most people in Rochester, most people who come to Rochester would never know that. There's no way to know that. There's no marker, there's no historical plaque. There is a bust of Austin Stewart inside the hotel on the second floor. If you happen to know that, you can go and see it. But if you don't happen to know that, you're never going to know that. So this cultural vibrancy has to tie in with our long and storied history of the things that have happened in Rochester. We need to be able to tie that on a sidewalk level so that everybody has access to it. It can't be at the Museum Science Center. It can't be, in some place like the Strong Museum. I mean, those are great places and they need to have that too. But a lot of this has to be right out front and center where everybody that's standing there waiting for the bus or walking down the street can say, wow, I didn't know this happened here. Right here, right down at the Tallman building, Frederick Douglass's office was in there. And there's a big portrait of him right inside the lobby, and he published his paper. I mean, people don't know those things. And until we make them available and accessible, they still won't know. So I think we have to work on that.
Okay. Well, understanding that business has changed, so bear with me, folks. Those old guys are going to talk about back in the day. So, back in the day, so for those of y'all that don't know, that was actually a shopping location in Dana's background. That was Midtown. Not only could you go in there and go shop, but there was a lot of shopping on Main Street, in addition to the buses. And there was just, when I say a culture of vibrancy, during the holidays, people would push you off the sidewalk shopping downtown, believe it or not. So, how do we get something on a consistent, regular basis where folks feel, not just in the little park space, but where you're willing to come out, you're willing to walk around, you can buy a hot dog and a whole lot of other stuff and just roam up and down the street and not be afraid because there ain't nobody on the street. How do we do that? How do we energize that notion that you live in your community and your community is outside of your house, that you just don't hide in your house all day long? How do we do that?
Well, Council Member Patterson, you're right. I remember very well the good old days, and I remember going into Neisner's and getting a quarter slice of pizza, and I remember walking through Midtown, and I mean, that's why I put this up here, because it just reminds me of the way things were, and ideally the way things could be again. We will never again probably have the world's first indoor mall in a downtown area like we did in 1962 when this opened. But we could have some businesses on Main Street. We've worked very hard with the folks at Wind Development and their 1.1 million square feet of the Sibley building to help them reactivate and use that first floor space. So as you know, the Mercantile is in there now. We have 7 food-based businesses in there that you can walk in. Most of the time you can get, there's a coffee shop, there's a few places to buy sandwiches. I'm not sure if you can buy your hot dog, but I know there are some services in there that might be able to sell you a hot dog. So, that's a step. Getting the DGX grocery store next to that, that's another step. We just received, as you all know, in a competition across the whole state, we just received $10 million in the DRI, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. So we have $10 million that are all to be focused on that block between North Clinton and the river along Main Street. So, a lot of the challenge that we have is that buildings that had storefronts in them now have businesses in them. That whole block where CGI is, and CGI is a great corporation. We're great, we're very, fortunate to have the headquarters of CGI here in Rochester, but that whole long strip is just dead. You can't, it's mirrored so you can see yourself, but you can't see inside, and there are no services until you get down to the Family Dollar. So, we have to find ways to re-energize some of the spaces that we have left. And so some of that is things like the Mercantile, some of that is with the Downtown Revitalization Initiative, taking a look at the rest of those buildings on that side of Main Street. Across the street, we have the hotel. The hotel has a Starbucks. Okay, that's great. But along the length of Main Street, there are still far too many vacant storefronts. And we are going to be focusing on that. So that is something we hope to recreate. It will be difficult, probably, given the changes in retail. I mean, nobody, me, you, nobody would have thought that Sears would no longer be the #1 retailer in America. Nobody thought that something like Amazon would be where we'd order not only all of our clothing, but all of our other merchandise and our food. Nobody probably thought that. And it's probably not going to change back from that anytime soon. But if we can provide an experience, and if we can provide some reason for some people to come down here, they may just decide, I'd rather go down and actually see this merchandise as opposed to ordering it. And I'd like to go down, and if we can have other things happening, like we talked about before, there's another reason to come down. So we will continue to work on that. We're very optimistic about the $10 million award that we received from the state for the Downtown Revitalization Initiative. And we think with DRI, we'll be able to make some things happen on Main Street.
Any final questions? Okay, hearing no other questions, that concludes our confirmation hearing for Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for answering all of our questions tonight. You may be excused.
Thank you very much, council members. Appreciate it.
These appointments will be voted on at next Thursday's committee meeting and February 15th council meeting. We are adjourned.
Take care, everyone.